Hey again, travel bosses. I'm excited to bring you this week's sponsor, TripStreak, the smarter travel search. What I love about TripStreak is the ability to set your personal preferences to either have or avoid red-eye flights or have things like completely lie flat seats. So the next time you need to book a flight, check out tripstreak.com/travel-like-a-boss.
Welcome to the Travel Like a Boss podcast, the radio show all about traveling like a boss by being your own boss. Stay tuned for weekly interviews featuring guests that have built their own online businesses. If you would like to have access to our entire back catalog, visit travellikeabosspodcast.com for instant access. And here's your host, Johnny SD.
Hey guys, it's Johnny and welcome to episode 159 of the Travel Like a Boss podcast. I'm here with Mike LaRosa.
Hola.
Hola from Barcelona.
Barcelona.
Actually, we're not even in Barcelona.
We're not hour north, I guess?
Yeah. Well, she knows. We're like way further.
Is it?
The train was
Probably
about an hour on the bullet, like the fastest train with no stops.
Well, we took the slowest one then, I guess.
Did you?
Maybe. We were on the same one.
No, that was the fastest one.
Was that the
for
fastest
sure.
one?
Well,
Oh, wow.
it had a few stops, but not as many as normal. And then it was a 30-minute drive. So we were probably like an hour and a half, 2 hours into the mountains of Spain in Catalonia.
Catalonia. I mean, the view's just incredible here.
Yeah, so we're actually at a coworking retreat put on by Coworkation.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you guys won't fucking believe where we are.
Yeah, we need to we most definitely need to get some shots of this. It's a monastery from the 12th century that apparently was destroyed in the Spanish Civil War. And there's some folks here that started rebuilding it, I guess, 2 years ago, Stu said? Year and a half ago, so?
I didn't know anything about this until like literally days ago. So
yes.
The reason why I'm here is my buddy Sam Marks, who co-hosts Invest Like a Boss, was like, "Hey buddy, you gonna be in Barcelona?" I'm like, "Yep." He's like, "Well, me and Leanne, his co-founder of coworker.com,
yes, was
gonna go to this retreat." And all he said, I didn't look at the website, didn't look at any photos. All he said was, it's going to be like hour and a half away in the mountains, and it's going to be all you can eat and all you can drink included.
Yep, with a pool.
No, he didn't say that. He didn't say anything.
Tell you the pool.
Nothing. He told me nothing. And he's like, "Do you want to come hang out for a week?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, sign me up."
I love it.
And I didn't even look at the website until last night.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm glad you signed up and paid before you saw the site. But no, Coworkation's amazing. I met Stu, probably 2 years ago at Coworking on Conference Asia. And he's done a bunch of Coworkation packages all over the world and trips. And we kind of brainstormed last fall and said, why don't we do one that's kind of themed for coworking? So we've got a bunch of folks coming that either own or operate a co-working space or are looking to open one or are in the process of opening one and just wanted to geek out with us co-workaholics for a couple nights.
Well, just let everyone know, I'm not planning on opening a co-working space. I like working out of some of them, but I definitely don't imagine myself ever opening any physical business, especially co-working space.
That's probably smart because most people that end up opening a co-working space will probably not admit, but a couple days a week they probably don't work there because if they did, they wouldn't get any work done. So
yeah, I've actually heard that a lot.
If you enjoy co-working, then opening a space might not be exactly for you. I don't know. I don't want to say that, but it's just kind of funny. It's kind of like this little dirty secret, right?
But I think that's for every business, right?
It is, yeah. Well, because it is your business and you have to be on, and so it's hard to go through the email inbox and do all the work stuff that has to be done when your members are, asking you or talking to you or you're, giving tours or whatnot. So
yeah. And even like the people that I know that work at a restaurant, they're a chef. They're not at home cooking up gourmet meals. No. They're making like mac and cheese or like
ramen. A lot of ramen.
They're so sick of their work. So I think that's kind of what's nice about our lives as kind of location independent entrepreneurs is, I don't want to say we like kind of just show up places and just,
but we do.
We kind of do, right?
Well, there's great opportunities, right? I mean, it allows you the ability to take advantage of those. Because how many times, I don't know about you, but when I had a desk job, a 9-to-5 traditional corporate gig, there were so many times where I could go somewhere, but then I couldn't, right? Because I only had my 2 weeks vacation, So having the freedom allows you just to kind of open up your eyes a little bit and kind of experience what maybe you were meant to experience, and because you can take the chance.
Yeah, and we have the freedom of both time and money. I think that's the key. Is a lot of people have money because they have this great corporate job, but then they're working all the time.
Yeah.
And then some people have a lot of free time. Maybe they're retired. Maybe they have no job and they're broke, but then they can't afford to travel.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. I think what's the Dalai Lama has a really great quote that we work so hard to make money, but then we work ourselves sick and we have to spend that money to then
heal ourselves.
Yeah. Or it's like the Fight Club quote, right? It's, you work jobs you hate to make money, to pay for things you don't need, to impress people you don't like.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, anyway.
And it's so true. And actually, that's a good point that's the kind of third part of, you either have time or money and not both. The third part is you either have time, money, or health, and very few all three. Because you can technically be retired, have, a bunch of money in the bank, have plenty of free time, but then by then, maybe you don't have your health.
Yeah, and you can't do everything you want. I think that's there's I think so many people that are now kind of starting to experience that, where they do dream for retirement, right? And then unfortunately life happens, and then you look back and go, oh shit, maybe I should have done what I wanted to do when I could have, instead of saying, oh, one day. Yeah.
So why not today? So to kind of give you guys a setting, you want to describe where we're sitting right now?
We are on the pool deck or pool area overlooking this amazing kind of like valley or gully and mountains, and there's like cityscapes over there, and we've got this adorable little Wiltshire Terrier named Berta who's adorable, loves playing catch. I don't know. It's pretty great. I think a photo would do better than my description, but
yeah, I'll definitely make a photo of this place, the album cover, and I'll have some photos in the show notes. So if you guys want to click on that, you can take a look. But I mean, we just arrived, so I'm sure I'll talk more about the actual retreat and the place after we settle in more. But I mean, we've just been here for like 2 hours, and already I'm so happy I'm here. It's a fucking monastery.
It is, and I mean, I just feel so much more relaxed. Like I've been very tightly wound. Well, I am normally. You'll get to know me. I mean, Johnny and I literally just met. We met. We were all on the same train, and he and I are crammed in this little elevator. And then as we rolled off the elevator, we're like, "Oh, yeah, you're here for the same thing."
Yeah. Perfect timing. And
but yeah, most definitely, just there's peace, right? It's quiet, and it's.
It actually kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you guys ever played Assassin's Creed, but it reminds me of like the monastery that it's based out of. So yeah, it's a beautiful place. Definitely look at the photos. But the reason why I actually wanted to have you on the show is you've had such an interesting life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So before we get into what you're up to nowadays, how did this all start?
Well, it started with a fateful client trip to Kansas City. Which is kind of bizarre.
Where are you from originally?
So I grew up in DC, just outside DC in the burbs. Went to college in DC, and college was most definitely not for me, but it took about 7 years to figure that one out. And I had quit a corporate gig in 2012. I had one of those quintessential, like, fuck you, you're cool, fuck you, I'm out. It was April 20th.
What kind of corporate job was this?
At this point, it was in media. So, I was in event sponsorships and sales, and I worked in advertising. And I didn't realize at the time I was young. I was like 25 maybe. I didn't realize what a great gig I had. Right. So I kind of took it for granted. And just was like, I'm done. I was just miserable. And I knew there was something more to my life, more than money, because I was making a killing. But I was miserable, right? I was working all the time. And so, I had started my own business, right? My parents both own their own businesses, and I figured, well, they could do it, so could I. And so I found a contract, to do a festival in DC and to do sponsorship and marketing for them. And I quit. And,
what kind of festival is this?
Well, it was called Taste of DC. It's a big food festival. Most cities have like Taste of Chicago, Taste of whatever. And it was okay. It wasn't, anything I was really in love with. And then I started getting some more clients, right? And, kind of networking it. And in 2013, I had a phenomenal client who I adore, that needed to open up an office in Kansas City. He does UX design, and he was working with the IRS and wanted to grow his presence there. And he told me about this great building he had heard of, and he wanted to do an event there, and it was a co-working space. And I'd known about co-working. I had interacted with spaces before, but I had the false impression that they were only for tech startups, or that the spaces in DC that I knew of were more of the, you had to be a startup or you had to have a team, and I was just a freelancer, so.
Yeah, it's what's crazy because the first time I ever heard of co-working was out in Chiang Mai, Thailand, where everybody was either freelancer or an entrepreneur. And when I went to San Francisco on, just to visit family over Christmas, and I was like, oh, let me check out a co-working space there, expecting it to be the same, expecting everyone to be an entrepreneur, expecting everyone to want to meet each other, mingle. And I got there as a WeWork, and even in their open space, nobody wanted to talk. And everybody, I would ask people what they're up to, and they would have, it was almost like trade secrets. It was completely different.
And it was like heads down, headphones in.
Yep. And people were basically employees of, and most of them were startups, but they acted more like employees than they did like remote workers. Because I guess they weren't really remote.
Yeah, no, I mean, they were just probably relocated there, or, a lot of small to medium-sized businesses now are just actually, they're adjusting into co-working, right? They're just not signing large leases anymore, leases of any sort. So, I walked in the space and within minutes was like, holy cow, there's other people that are kind of like me. They don't have to have the next Uber, right? They're just a contractor or a freelancer. And to be honest, I don't know how much time we have. It could be a very long story. I'll try to keep it trimmed down. The woman who was kind of the glue of the space, she kind of was all things community manager, but also events, whatever. She saw that I did events, and she had just committed to host the Global Coworking Conference in 2014 in Kansas City, and said, hey, I'm working with this woman who's a coworking expert, and you're an events guy. You guys should probably chit chat. And I was interested in co-working. I was like, okay. And before you knew it, a couple days later, I'm on the phone with Liz Elam, who, founded and runs Juicy, they call it.
What does Juicy stand for?
Stands for the Global Coworking Unconference Conference.
And so it kind of boggles my mind that the Global Coworking Conference or Unconference is in Kansas City?
Well, yeah. So that was I guess maybe the third year she had done it, or fourth. I forget. The years kind of blur. It started as a meetup at South by. Okay. Right? It was just people that were at South by originally to attend, and they just
South by Southwest.
South by Southwest, sorry. Big tech conference and innovation conference now in Austin, Texas. And people just wanted to hang out with other co-working people. And it was a meetup. And then it grew, and Liz really, I have to hand it to her. She saw what it could be, right? And she's grown it to, a couple hundred people at the USA conference. There's a Canadian conference now. There's one in Australia. She just announced that there's going to be one in Dubai next year. So she and I really hit it off. And at the time, one of my other clients was the Ronald Reagan Building, an International Trade Center, which is the second largest federally owned building in the world. And they had some space that they were trying to activate to support the GSA contract. It's a building by the people for the people, so we would do programs and events. And she told me on the phone late one night, if you're really serious about co-working, then next month you should get your ass to Barcelona for Co-working Europe, and you should learn about co-working. And so I got on the phone the next day with my client, the CEO of the Reagan Building, and said, I think I need to go. And he said, great. And so it's so kind of funny that here we are back, not in Barcelona proper, but, that's where the magic happened. That was the first day of my co-working life, was in Barcelona.
Wow, that's crazy. And that was just a few years ago.
Yeah, it was the fall of 2013. It was November 2013.
And I think exactly around that time, I started co-working too.
Really?
Yeah.
I love it. No,
maybe a little bit. Yeah, definitely 2013.
Was it?
Summer of that, maybe. Yeah.
So.
And now how much has co-working changed since then till now?
Night and day. Just the visibility or the awareness, right? From 2013 till about maybe even the beginning of last year or the end of 2015, I would say, I'm in co-working, or I work in co-working. People would not even understand it. Now, I kind of knew we were hitting kind of mass awareness when my parents stopped thinking I was crazy. When my 60-something-year-old parents were like, oh, this makes sense, right? So now we're witnessing co-working evolve into thousands of different directions, right? There's co-working for fashion designers. There's co-working, you've always had maker spaces, right? But now there's a co-working space in Washington, DC I work with. They just do government contracting. Their whole mission is to help small businesses or veteran-owned businesses learn how to contract with the U.S. federal government, right?
That's cool that there's all these kind of niche spaces popping up.
Yep.
So a makerspace, if you guys aren't aware, is a place for people to physically make things. And, they usually, it's like a co-working space, but / workshop.
Yeah.
They might have a 3D printer in there. They might have like
some laser cutters or equipment that an individual would never want to. Why would you want to spend $40,000 on something that you're going to use very little time, right?
Yeah. And so that actually makes a lot of sense. And I'm actually surprised you don't hear about that more often. Like there should be spaces for, carpentry or
even, there's a lot out there. I think also if you really kind of want to get super deep and kind of into it, salons, they're co-working spaces. Salons have been around, forever, but in theory, the the stylist or the person who cuts your hair, they're just renting that chair.
Yeah, that's
right.
That's true. Yeah.
And they're sharing the shampoo chair and the equipment, right? Now they might have to buy some of their own equipment, right, and some of their own tools, but co-working is not a new idea. I think it's just really kind of evolving as the ability for us to work remotely has grown with it, right? I think technology and I think mobility really was like the gas on the whole thing.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And, like the more and more I think about it, like the sharing economy really makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I used to own, a garage full of tools to change my oil or like, fix some things here and there. And I never really wanted a set of ratchets or a jack or any of this stuff. But I just figured like, oh, well, I guess I have to have it because, it's not really, I guess you can rent it.
Yeah.
But it'd be so much better if I can just go somewhere and be able to just, use the spaces that, there, but also interact with other people who maybe have this as a hobby and they can help, you can help each other out. You can learn from each other. And you can just hang out with like-minded people.
Well, I think that's the magic, right? And I think that's something that is very hard to explain or describe until someone experiences it firsthand. I ended up joining a space in 2014 in DC called Affinity Lab, and it was one of the most dynamic and diverse communities I've ever met. You had lawyers, international speakers. They had the number one most listened to indie alternative internet radio streaming station. They had translators, creative graphic designers. And to prove to your point, one of the biggest or kind of craziest jobs I ever got was working with Adobe, which was the radio station I just mentioned. They sat next to me. I didn't really know what they did, but we would maybe share deliveries for like the delivery minimum. And one day the CEO looked at me and he goes, "You do events?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, I haven't been listening in on you, but I just, hear what you're talking about." He goes, "We want to launch a live events division. And, we've got millions of listeners all over the world." Yeah. So before you know it, 3 days later, I'm at Soho House in West Hollywood and I'm sitting there with Joel Madden, from Good Charlotte, who was the investor of the company. And they offered me a job and said, "Do you want to run a live events division for us?" And it was magic, right? I mean, there was no business development spent. There was no marketing. And it was just this natural, they'd gotten to know me, right, over the course of a couple months. And it just felt perfect. And,
And that's definitely the best way to get any kind of gig or any kind of job.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I like doing this podcast organically and not having like bullet points of what we need to talk about is things unfold.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good time to talk about kind of like the power of networking.
Yep.
Because I have a friend right now and she is just getting into her, into freelancing. First time working remotely. She worked normal office job before. Now she just started traveling. She wants to work remotely and she didn't know where to go. So she was like, "Oh, maybe I'll fill out a profile on Upwork." And she's hating the process. She's writing her CV or resume. And then somebody, another friend was like, "Why don't you just post on your Facebook wall or in one of the the groups and say, hey, does anyone need anyone?
Yeah, it's amazing. Seats to Meet, a company in the Netherlands, they love the term accelerated serendipity. Like you just said, when you've got like-minded individuals that just run into each other naturally and get to know each other a little bit and just have a conversation, it really allows for authentic interactions, right? Everyone talks about how people these days are seeking authenticity and experiences, right? And networking events are not authentic, right? I worked with a gentleman from Australia for a short time, brought him to DC when I had this consulting firm. And the first night in town, I took him to a networking event and he put his name badge on and he was laughing. He goes, oh, now I know. This is going to be so imperfect. He goes, now I know what it feels like to be a woman because everyone's staring at my chest. And I said, oh, what do you mean? And he goes, and I go, I was so used to it. I'm from DC. And he goes, everyone's looking at who I am and where I'm from or who I work with. And he was like, people are just, I was like, oh yeah, those networking events are not authentic because people are so focused on getting a sale or finding a client or doing a deal that they're only going to talk to you if they think that you'll provide value rather than just chatting with someone at the coffee maker and being like, oh,
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, I still like going to network events, but what I do differently is I don't go with an intention.
Yeah.
I normally don't even, I guess I will wear a name badge sometimes, but sometimes I won't even wear a name badge.
I typically don't. I take it off.
Yeah. I don't even own business cards.
Neither do I.
And I usually either won't take people's cards or I'll just automatically just toss them.
Yeah.
But the people that I meet kind of just naturally or through a friend or, just hanging out by the bar, those people I add on Facebook, and Facebook it's like this love-hate thing, right? Mm-hmm. But it really is the easiest way to connect with someone.
It is immediately, and
you can do it on your phone. You don't have to lose the contact,
and you can keep in touch. I mean, one of the attendees here, Matthias, he and I met at a conference in South Africa, and we've been Facebook friends, and we chat occasionally. And I came today and gave him a big hug because this is only the second time in 2 years I've actually seen him. But we're friends, right? I mean, we share common interests. We talk about things. Facebook Messenger is great for that. No, the one thing I hate about networking events, people, the first question you hear is like, well, what do you do? And I've kind of developed my responses. I don't answer that question. Or I've, kind of the faux pas is, if you're out there, people, I know you're listening, do not give someone your business card unless they ask for it. Like that is the biggest, right away that it's not an authentic connection when someone walks up and goes, oh, hi, nice to meet you. Here's my card. No. Let them ask for your information, right?
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. And that giving someone your card is wasting paper.
Yeah.
Because there's no way they're going to remember you or call you or just look through it and be like, oh, I happen to want it,
Yeah, do you know how many cards I have in my bag right now? I mean, sometimes I do need them. If we do go to spaces, I need their contact information. We do a lot of photo shoots. We do a lot of video interviewing. We're documenting spaces in 360 now for virtual reality tours. So, business cards are useful, but, once you type them in, then it's like, it really is a waste of paper. It kind of makes me wish, years ago, the hot thing when you had not even a BlackBerry remember the palms?
The palm, yeah.
It was like the bump. Remember, whatever happened to the bump? That used to be great because you could get each other's contact info immediately.
Well, what I do is if I actually want someone's information, I'll take a photo of their business card and give it back to them. Yeah. And sometimes they're offended that I'm giving it back to them. But I'm like,
I tell them I'm trying to save them money.
And I told them, I'm like, if I keep your card, I'll lose it. But I have a photo of it now.
Yeah.
And this is forever. This is back to Google Photos.
Well, or like what you just did earlier, like, oh, I'm on Facebook, or here, I hand people my phone, like, just put your name in, let's keep in touch. So, I mean, that was, that fateful trip to Kansas City was kind of, I got bit by the bug, chugged the Kool-Aid, and I haven't looked back. I pretty much shut down Wayfair. That was the name of my, consulting firm. I kind of, I guess, ominously named it Wayfair.
So not like the $1 billion e-commerce company.
Yeah, not Wayfarer. So Wayfarer is Old English for wanderer, traveler.
Oh, like the Wayfarer Ray-Ban sunglasses.
And so my favorite movie is Risky Business. And I love, so when I first launched my company, I met a lot of people that wanted to do events or or needed my help, they knew what they needed to do, but they didn't know where to go or how to do it. So I was like, oh, we're a Wayfarer advisory group. And I was like, oh, that's a fucking mouthful. And then Wayfarer. And then I realized I was kind of my own Wayfarer because I was kind of taking all these client jobs. You know, I did amazing events with Google. I worked for the Smithsonian Institute. I worked with Adobe, Joel Madden, like world-class brands. And I was still unhappy. Like I was still lost unbeknownst to myself. And it took a really great guy and a dear mentor now, in 2015 to say, hey, you know, someone called you a coworkaholic. I think you got to do something with that. And then that kind of really was what sped up what we do now. So coworkaholic has led me around the world. I've been to hundreds of spaces in probably 48, 50 different countries.
So what are you actually doing with Workaholic now?
So Coworkaholic's a blog on coworking. It's more about on the industry. We are the spaces, faces, and places of coworking. And that led me to meet my new business partner now. And we formed a company called Communitas. And so that company does three things. We optimize shared workspaces, we help build professional communities, and we develop real estate.
Is that name a play off of Communication and Veritas?
No, we were sitting in Las Vegas. We were spending the week with Tony Hsieh at his little Airstream park. And we had an idea for our first business under Communitas was to help independent spaces get bigger events and sponsorships. That's my background, right? And so I saw WeWork has a couple people in charge of partnerships, and they've got a large network of spaces. And so it's easy for them to get those big corporate deals. But there's way more independent spaces than there are WeWorks. But when you're an independent owner operator, you're all things. You're like chief cook, bottle washer, you know, giving tours, selling memberships, cleaning up the back, you know, you don't have the bandwidth sometimes to find events or to find partnerships. And so I didn't want to get cornered as just the co-working people. And so Communitas really speaks to our belief in the power of communities, right? And so how do you help support community builders like yourself, right? How do you support community builders? We work with a woman who runs Venture Forward for women in diversity. And so she does all these amazing events for that community. We can support her, right? That's really where it came from. Literally, I was just searching for like different words, and we like community, and I was just like, what's this? I was like, oh, it's Latin for community. So that's how that happened.
I like it.
Yeah. It was it's a little bit more lame than I'd hope it to be, but literally it was just, we were sitting in this coffee shop in Vegas, and I'm like, oh, Latin for community, Communitas. And then we saw that the URLs were available, so we just bought them all up.
I like it. I definitely approve on that.
Yeah.
So you hung out with the Zappos CEO.
Yeah. So, I know we're jumping all over the place. At one part of last year, I opted to move to Bali for about 2.5 months, and I helped produce the Coworking Unconference Asia. So I worked out of Hubud, and a buddy of mine that I knew from high school is actually one of the original 3 co-founders of 500 Startups. And he reached out to me and said, we had connected on Facebook through our alumni group. And he said, hey, like, I love the shit that you post on Facebook, and I just bought an Airstream, and I just tricked it out, and I sold my house, and I'm going on the road. We're going to take venture capitalists and family office investors to small town America. And I was like, I love everything about that story. So I came back from Asia when the conference was done, and we hopped into an Airstream, and we went to Tulsa, Oklahoma. We went to Albuquerque, New Mexico, Omaha, and Vegas was one of the stops.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
So what were these things that you were posting on Facebook?
I was posting a lot of the Coworkaholic blog posts that I was writing about. I was doing a lot of I do a lot of Facebook Live videos of spaces. A lot of people that want to open a space, they don't necessarily have the budget to travel and explore, so I bring it to them. And so he just loved that. And he had opened a space in DC called Disruption Corp that was acquired by 1776. And so he wanted on this road trip to plant himself in each city in a different co-working space. So for the Vegas stop, the Vegas Tech Fund was our host, and they put us up. Tony has this amazing Airstream park. They call
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Oh, it's called Llama-lopolis.
Okay.
And they've got llamas and chickens and dogs, and it's a mix of Airstreams and tiny houses. And some of the Zappos, very few Zappos employees live there. There's some digital nomads. There's friends of Tony's. And so that's where they put us up. We pulled in. They have a couple empty spots. So that's where we put one of the Airstreams. So that's why I was
cool.
there.
So if you guys aren't familiar with the Airstream, it's what, like a big silver?
It's a big like silver bullet almost. It's like the fancy schmancy like retro camper, I guess. You know, it's a trailer RV, not an RV. It's not an RV because it's not built-in motor. It's a trailer. And it's kind of like classic Americana, right? It's an American-made, you know, product. It's kind of like very retro, and it's very in.
Are they making new ones, or are people just restoring them?
No, so they've always stayed in production. Their sales are actually going up. And they have a brand new model. I'm not selling for Airstream, I promise, but they have a new model they just released that's most definitely targeted to it's a smaller size, cheaper for millennials or folks of our age, because they're priced, they're not cheap.
Yeah,
they're not cheap.
How much were the originals and how much is this one?
Oh God, I have no idea, but I mean, you can spend over $100,000. I mean, and fully customized, right? So the one that Paul, his store is called Results Junkies. The Results Junkies Airstream, I mean, it's branded. I mean, he even brought samples of the cherry cabinets and the granite countertops from his home. He brought it to the Airstream factory, and that's what they used to customize it, right? And he put in, like, you can optimize the battery packs for like all like heavy tech usage, lighting, you name it. I mean, you can trick them out pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
You can rack up a pretty hefty price.
Yeah, but you know, even though these things are very, very expensive compared to like an RV or a trailer, it's still like the fact that, you know, these tech entrepreneurs like Tony Hsieh are living in these instead of living in a multi-million-dollar mansion. It's still like a very minimalistic kind of cool way to live.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that if you take a look at, I mean, even Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg, you know, they wear the jeans and the t-shirt or the jeans and the hoodie. I've even streamlined. I followed that 333 clothing blog. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard of it.
Yeah. Life-changing. Life-changing, because not only can I now live 3 weeks on the road out of a carry-on,
with 33, so it's 33 items.
33 items.
Total, including your shoes.
Yes.
And you have to be able to live off of it for 3 weeks?
For 3 months.
3 months?
Well,
wow.
So the rule is every 3 months, it's technically for seasons, you can then swap stuff out, right? You know, underwear and workout clothes and pajamas don't count against it. But there's so many there are so many decisions and choices that I have to make on a day-to-day basis that have major implications. I don't want to have to stand in front of a closet and be like, what am I going to wear today? I grew up going to school with uniforms, right? I just want to just put some clothes on, you know?
I can imagine all the women who do this thinking, oh, I could have 26 pairs of leggings.
Yeah.
my yoga tights.
And it's tough because I was back home with my mom a week or two ago, real fast in DC, and we went shopping and I was like, oh my God, there's a pair of really great suede shoes and they're on sale. I was like, I've always wanted a pair like that. And I was like, nope. I was like, what are you going to do with that? I was like, come on. So I think people that might have experienced what our culture defines as quote unquote success, I think that they realize that there's more to life than that. There's more to life than those massive closets with, you know, the bars and the, you know, the seating areas and the big houses. You know, I don't think that makes you happy.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I think we always feel like we need to fill up empty space in a house.
Yeah.
So whenever I moved into a new place, you always end up moving in a bigger place first off. Like you almost never downsize unless you have to, then you feel bad that you have to downsize.
Yeah.
So people are always, you know, moving into bigger spaces. And then I feel like I have to buy more furniture to fill up this corner or this room. And I think now I could live somewhere and just have it be empty. I actually kind of like that minimalistic look.
Yeah.
But I think if it wasn't for the fact that, you know, I had to sell everything to move to Asia, I never would have known that. And by being in a tiny house, you know, or living out of Airstream, it's one of those ways that forces you to have less stuff.
Oh, most definitely. Well, and that's, you know, I got rid of my place in DC in the fall of 2015 because I had been traveling so much, and I literally downsized to 3 boxes, right? And even to this day, even though I'm in a 25,000 square foot warehouse in Chicago, I literally live on an air mattress, right? I've been there for almost a year. I'm not there as much, but, you know, I've got a little like temporary little closet just so that dust doesn't get on my stuff, and I've got an air mattress. That's all you need, right? You know, it just frees you up. When I got rid of all that stuff, I sold everything, right? And I just, you know, just felt relief. I just felt I had freedom and, was able to go do stuff.
I like it. So tell me about the space that you have now.
Yeah. So, Noah, my business partner, and I came up with this idea for Communitas in Vegas. And he had just left WeWork. He was the global expansion lead. And he was dead set on moving or going to Chicago to meet with Red Bull. And said, I think we can pitch them on a partnership. And I was like, yeah, go for it, And so I was still on this tour. I wasn't ready to leave, and I was still kind of committed to it. And he goes to this coffee shop in Chicago, and the person from Red Bull didn't show up and blew him off. And I guess it was, if he's not at WeWork anymore, they weren't interested. And he looked up and saw a gentleman that he knew, that did all of his signage for the WeWork he opened in Chicago. And his name is Mike, of course, because there's not enough Mikes on our team now. And Mike goes, hey, Noah, I just bought a building. He bought 2 buildings, actually, but I bought a building, and my brother wants to put in all this co-working. I don't know this. You should come check it out. And Noah checked it out and immediately said, this is not right for co-working where you are right now in this neighborhood. It's not going to work. But private offices will work. A venue will work. There's a really great backyard, and there's something potentially upstairs. So he called me, and I was still in Vegas, and he goes, I'm going to pitch him on this concept. For about 18 months prior to this, I had been working on what the evolution of a business model for co-working could be. It might not be signing a lease. Maybe it's like a hotel. Maybe you work for the owner or with the owner. So Noah says, can I pitch this idea? I said, yeah, sure, whatever. I've been pitching it for 18 months. No one bit. And 3 days later, he sends me a text and he goes, we just got the keys to this building. Get your ass out to Chicago. And that was a year ago.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, so we've redeveloped it. We've got a food truck park-ish in the backyard. I mean, we've made it so that food trucks can pull in. We do have them occasionally. There's a brewery next door. We've got a big-ass backyard that we turfed. We have a bocce company that's based in our building, so they do all these really cool bocce tournaments.
Well, so bocce's the
Italian lawn bowling.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like, you see all those old men in Italy throwing those balls. And then we've got a venue for hire, which is beautiful, turnkey audiovisual. And then the upstairs where we're living, will eventually be kind of not a co-living, but it will be like en suites that are available for rental. But yeah, that was a year ago. And we're now working on our second property in San Francisco, right at 16th and Church. It's pretty fucking perfect. It's 2 blocks from Dolores Park.
So I'm really curious, like, how do these deals work? So you and your partner with Coworkaholic, you guys develop the space and you run it, but then
Yes.
then there's the guy that actually owns the building.
Mm-hmm. So people don't realize that Marriott hotels only own 2% of all the properties that are Marriott branded. And so those hotels, for the most part, are owned by investors or larger, what they call REITs, real estate investment trusts. And those can be multi-billion-dollar portfolios. And Noah, I have to credit him, has a great saying. A building is a box. A shoebox is a box. A shoebox can hold shoes. A shoebox can hold receipts, or it can hold your kid's school diorama. Same can be said for a building. It's all about how you market it. It's all about how you manage it. And so we work with the owners and we teach them what we know. They know the buildings. I mean, they've clearly made enough money where they own a building. We know how to foster community or build out the space to maximize the revenue. And then we enter into a joint venture partnership. And so everyone's got skin in the game. We're all incentivized to drive revenue and keep expenses down and, make it profitable and find new revenue streams that we can, add to the building.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I like that. Because I think a lot of people, they have this grand vision of building something that they want, but in their mind, they're like, I can never afford to buy a building.
Well, let alone, furniture, office furniture primarily is so expensive. And when you, as a business owner, you have to hold that as a depreciating asset on your books. We did an estimate, the space that we're in Chicago, if they would have done the original concept that they thought would have worked, that would have been $750,000 just in furniture. I'm not even talking about build out or Wi-Fi and other audiovisuals and lighting, just fucking furniture. So a lot of folks struggle. They want to open up a space, but they don't want to sign a lease. What happens if the business goes under? Now you've got tied to a 5, 7, 10-year lease. that you have to pay on that, right? And then you have to do the build out. Then you have to negotiate the tenant improvement. But until recently, most building owners have only been interested in leasing because that's all the brokers want them to consider, because that's how the brokers make their money. 2016 at the end of last year and all of this year has been very interesting. There's been kind of an awakening maybe, and there's a lot more building owners out there. Maybe I think they're sitting on vacancy a little bit longer than they thought they would. Personally, I think we're sitting on a massive bubble. Again, I don't think we learned our lesson from 2008. And so I think you're going to see more building owners and these companies that manage these portfolios open-minded to how do I activate this space? We're working with hotels now, in Dubai that are putting in co-working spaces in the hotel to help increase overall foot traffic, help increase overall food and beverage sales, in addition to providing a service for workspace for people that might be staying there.
I definitely think that remote working is not going away. It's just growing. Yeah. And whether businesses like it or not, people are going to show up with their laptops and want to work from there. Whether it's a hotel lobby or a bar or a restaurant or a coffee shop.
Well, and it's in the business's best, businesses should, in theory, want their employees to be as productive as possible. And you're only as productive as you are comfortable. And so people aren't necessarily comfortable in working in all those like massive open offices or in dark, dank cubicles. Sometimes people like working in cafes. Sometimes people like working in hotel lobbies, or maybe they like working at the beach, right? I'm super productive when I go to Puerto Vallarta, because I wake up extra early. I go to the co-working space. I get all of my work done. I get way more work done before 12 noon, 1 p.m. than I would have before. And then I can go to the beach in the afternoon, right? And there's a little bit more of a life balance. Now, I might have my phone with me or my laptop. I might answer a couple calls or emails, but I want to get to the beach. So I want to get my work done, right? I want to be able to make that choice, right? So I think companies are starting to quickly realize, let's let the people work where they want to work, right? And let them decide, and not force them in an office, and then also not kind of just throw them at home. Because I think they realize now working from home is not great.
I think working from home is terrible.
It's the worst.
I know there's some people that, like my buddy Chris, he's an introvert. He can just put his head down and he can work all day, all night. Yeah. First off, there aren't that many people like him.
Yeah. I wish I was like him. I can't, I don't have the self-discipline.
I can't work at home at all. Yeah. I mean, I feel antsy, like I need to do something. So I'm walking back and forth to the kitchen. Yeah. I'm like laying down, taking a nap, getting up, doing this. And I don't feel productive. Yeah. But, when I'm out around, and then I get, I think even with Chris, I don't think he even realizes that if he does this, a couple of days in a row, he's going to get depressed because he's just not around people.
Well, I mean, I always get torn. I think people often wonder why I'm so obsessed with co-working. It's my entire life. My father has worked from home for 28 years and I adore him. I love him and he has supported me in everything, but I've seen what it's done to him. He's out of touch, right? He's in a routine that's not necessarily healthy. There's no physical movement really. So he has, over the years gained weight. He also doesn't understand why people don't talk to him on the phone anymore. The company had, last year, his business, we had some challenges. Co-working has helped solve some of those challenges. He is now working with people as a veteran-owned business at this co-working space in DC. He's meeting some people. He's getting a little bit more motivated to maybe explore new things. Working from home in isolation is awful. And that's what happened to me. When I started my own business in 2012, I was in an English basement apartment in DuPont Circle. I put on 40 pounds in 6 months. I never realized that I was like the social butterfly of my office. I thrived off of that. I loved being on the party planning committee. I loved having chats with people at the water cooler, literally, right? And working from home, I didn't even have a reason to get showered anymore, right? And then at 5 o'clock, I was desperate to find a friend who'd go meet me for a drink just so I could talk to someone. I knew I was in trouble when my morning consisted of like watching the Today Show until like the 4th hour with Kathy Lee and Hoda and then being like, oh shit, like do some work, man. I don't have that self-discipline. I wish I did, but I don't.
Yeah. And I would say majority of people in the world are the same. For me, the most productive I've ever been in my life is probably in Chiang Mai, Thailand, where I had a routine.
Yeah.
So I'd wake up and I would leave the house within 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I would walk to the co-working space, which is only maybe 5 blocks away, so you get a little sun, a little exercise. Yep. And I would have my bulletproof coffee. Yep. I would work until maybe 11, go grab a soup, come back,
yep.
And then have a chat with people. Literally by the water cooler. I think every place should have a water cooler.
Yeah.
And then by then I normally had my actual work done, but then by talking to people, I would get inspired to do something else.
Hands down. The happiest I've ever been was when I worked at Affinity Lab. It was a straight shot down U Street. Like what you said, I'd get up, do my little morning routine. I'd go straight to the gym. The gym was on my way to the space gave me a reason to get out of the house. And then I go to the gym. And then obviously we were talking earlier, it's a slippery slope. If you keep up the gym routine, it's great. But the day you stop, then you don't go back, right? So it kept me going. And then I'd walk from Vita, the gym, to the coffee shop. I'd get my coffee and then I'd walk to Affinity Lab. And I got an extra 30 minutes of walking, each way in addition to the workout. And every day I couldn't wait to get to that space. And then when I tried to then run it, I did run it for a while, try to buy it. I couldn't wait to open up the door and I'd be at the front desk. And my members would be like, I love coming in because you're like, good morning, how's it going? Right? Routine is important. That's something I struggle with right now being remote. It's very hard.
I'm exactly the same way. And that's why I'm trying to, I don't want to say travel less because I still like traveling, but I want to stay in places longer. So
very true.
I'm forcing myself wherever I go, 1 month minimum wherever I am, because at least in that month I have a chance of developing some type of routine.
Yeah, that's something that right now, the way that the business is going, we're in the middle of a 25 city tour in North America. I think I understand now why celebrities or like musicians or artists
or anyone who has to travel,
that has to travel, they struggle so hard. Or, the thing I hate is like, everyone's, Mr. World Traveler. And I'm like, guys, like, it's really lonely. It's tough. Like, waking up and not knowing exactly where, having to remember where you are or having to deal with, insane connections or, delayed flights. It's a, I know some of you are probably like, oh, go fuck yourself. It's a catch-22, right? It proves that the grass is greener on the other side, always.
Yeah, and definitely. And, but I like this life because we have the choice.
We do.
And I think a lot of it comes out of freedom of choice.
Well, I mean, that sums up exactly, not just freedom of choice. I have control of my destiny because there were too many jobs that I had that I was good at. I wasn't just good. I was fucking great and I was killing it. And I still couldn't prove myself to the boss to do something a certain way because, well, that's just not the way it's done. And I just felt that a couple times in my career would shoot up the ladder and get promoted and I just hit a wall. And that wall was someone saying, that's not how we do it. Or this isn't, and I felt miserable because I couldn't control my destiny. I didn't have that choice. Right. And that's why I was like, fuck you. I'm out. I'm done. I want to choose who I want to work with, or I want to be able to choose how we do stuff instead of just being told, oh, that might be great, but nope, you got to do it like this. Or, why isn't your expense report, those types of things that kind of chip away at people, like office space when they just finally go berserk. It's that.
Well, congratulations on you finding your
Thanks.
Your bliss. I like it.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the future for co-working and for yourself?
The future of co-working, I really truly believe, is kind of adoption into all sorts of business models. We're on this tour, we're meeting amazing people that have incorporated co-working into a business of theirs. The Global Co-working Survey that's held or done by Desmag every year, this year, published data, a third of the spaces, almost a third, don't have to be profitable because they're part of a larger business. So I really do think that the future of co-working is incorporating co-working into the other models, right?
So like part of a cafe and they're making money at the cafe?
Exactly. Or, for example, in Singapore, Mozilla Firefox had a lot of extra unused or underused space. They converted it into co-working for some of their most engaged, like open source developers, so that their employees could naturally interact with people that were already, helping contribute to the product.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think so. It's a corporation of like a business model. So the hotel project in Dubai, it's a hotel. That's the primary function, but they've got co-working, or also the niche. In San Diego, there's a co-working space called Enrich just for attorneys. And the woman that runs it is a recovering corporate, attorney, and said, there's something wrong in our industry where every attorney kind of like hates their life, right? And so she exited and started her own thing, and she designed a space that was specifically for the needs of attorneys, right? So there maybe are some more private offices because maybe they do have security issues, or they need to have, confidentiality. And they've got some other, access to a library, so other amenities that a larger firm would have. So I think the future really is adoption of co-working.
That's really cool. I like that.
And
actually, I think you hit on 2 big points there. First is kind of like the niche co-working spaces. So instead of a space that is for, pretty much anyone, do you have designers and coders and programmers and, blah, 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 just sharing a space. I can definitely see, and I don't know, have you started seeing niche spaces that are like just for illustrators or just for designers?
Oh God, yeah. So there's, I can't think of the name of it right now, but a buddy from Berlin developed a co-working space. This was genius for a media company. And the concept was it was free co-working for freelancers and media creators. And it gives them immediate insight into what's going on. And then they'll then purchase that content, or if they need to, create video or whatever, get copy, right? So that's great. There's amazing spaces. One's called Artisans Asylum in Boston, 70,000 square feet. They've got plasma cutters. They've got 3D printers, but they've also got it's a makerspace, but co-working space, but, kind of focused more on industrial needs. There's the government contracting space, Eastern Foundry in Washington, D.C. There's spaces called Hera Hub that are female focused and spa influenced. There's shared kitchens, right? Which is brilliant. You've got a commercial kitchen that during the day is utilized by individuals that might have a home-based food business that needed to grow and expand. And then at night, they rent it out to food trucks that need prep space, right? I mean, I could go on. I mean, there's so many different ways.
That's cool. And I think a lot of times when we think about co-working, we just think of like a place for a freelancer or a digital nomad to go. But you just kind of really just opened everyone's eyes, thinking like everything could be a co-working space.
Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine how many times my friends' eyes have rolled over in their heads because I'm like, oh my God, that could be co-working. That could be, there's so many different areas or different industries that could be served by co-working, or that currently are served by co-working.
And I think that this is kind of part of the larger sharing economy.
Yeah. I mean, it's car ownership is down, right? Because you can just share the car. You can use those apps. You can do Airbnb. You can share, there's sharing libraries now. Why buy a sewing machine if you only need a sewing machine 3 times a year?
Or why buy a printer? I don't think anybody should own a printer.
Yeah.
But if you have access to a printer at a co-working space, great.
Yeah. So I think the future of co-working is just adoption into different industries, different business models, and people's lives. WeWork, people are afraid of them if they own the space. They shouldn't. In one of my previous lives, I was a store manager for Starbucks, right? So Starbucks has made it socially acceptable to drop $6 or more on a coffee, right? But take a look at the independent coffee shop industry. It's booming, right? Because everyone loves those craft, Starbucks is kind of a commodity now. It's like, it's like your go-to, like, safe bet. But people really love fancy coffee, or, just maybe better levels of different beans, whatever, right? WeWork is helping make it socially acceptable, or helping raise awareness that, you can pay $50 a month to share some space, or you can pay $700 a month for an office. And I think as that awareness grows, so will those smaller niche spaces, right?
Yeah, and definitely, especially if someone makes those niche spaces, I don't want to say better, because better is kind of a different term. But
because what is better?
But better for the individual or their needs. So WeWork like just like Starbucks, it's going to be generically good for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But there's going to be people who want to go to, I don't know, let's say like a paleo themed
Exactly.
like coffee shop instead.
Oh, yeah.
Or not everyone wants to work out of a WeWork if they are, let's say, a YouTuber.
Yeah.
They would love to be able to go to a space that's actually designed and, for people to film and edit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a space in New York City that's owned by Damon John from Shark Tank called Blueprint. And it's a space for fashion designers, right? And they can share the sewing machines and cutters and, not the models, the mannequins and everything. It's the,
and maybe even the models.
Yeah. And even maybe the models. It's just, I guess space utilization or just its efficiency. I just find it to be just far more efficient and just smarter to say, hey, I'm not going to buy all this equipment, right? I worked for a brief time for a boutique event firm and, they had to have like their own office and that's a large expense, right? I mean, when you have to brand your own office, you have to sign a lease, you have to buy the furniture. Imagine how much more cash would be freed up and headaches you'd not have to worry about if you just show up to a co-working space, right? You don't have to worry about getting a cleaning contract. You don't have to worry about dealing with a slumlord. You don't have to worry about your utility bill, getting internet. You just show up. So I think just co-working is going to help more people become successful business owners.
I definitely like that.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to spending this week.
I'm so stoked. I'm just excited we finally got to meet. I've heard so much about you.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And this space is fucking incredible so far.
Yes.
So stay tuned for next week. We're going to talk about how the actual retreat went. I am curious, what is kind of the future for you? What do you have planned?
I don't know. That's a great question. As of right now, the future is going to involve a lot of Dubai. And there's great stuff in Chicago. I love Chicago, but I'm still on the road, right? So the future is just going to be more spaces, documenting more. I don't know. I really can't imagine doing anything else other than what I'm doing right now. So it's hard to kind of think about, the future for me would just be continuing to explore new spaces, helping raise awareness, helping space owners improve their businesses.
I like that. Please tell all the spaces on my behalf to have comfortable chairs, good height desks, and stop designing spaces just for the photo to make it actually usable.
Yeah, most definitely. And on top of that, we always try to tell them or remind them, stop taking photos of empty spaces. These beautiful spaces that all over on their websites is just nothing but blank. It's all empty. It's beautiful, but there's no people. You need to have people in your space.
I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
So if people want to follow along or get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach?
Yeah, so it's coworkaholic.com. We are on Twitter at the coworkaholic and on Instagram at coworkaholic.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited that we just kind of dove into it. It's fantastic.
Well, let's go dive into some wine and tapas now.
Yes, please.
All right, everyone. I'll see you guys all next week. Bye-bye. Hey guys, I just want to give a really quick thank you to everyone who's been leaving all these amazing 5-star reviews of the podcast on iTunes. You guys rock, and you guys are the reason why we're able to continue doing this show every single week and bringing you all these amazing people who are quite frankly like living really incredible lives that we can all look up to and get some inspiration from. So this week, I want to thank Run Murado, who said, "Start here, take action, 5 stars. Through Johnny FD's podcast, I've learned about a variety of location-dependent opportunities. Love how he always has a tip, scoop, or hack to share. Excellent interviewer. As a result, I'm taking action. Thank you, Johnny." So thank you. And also thank you to TripStreak, our sponsor for this week. Next time you guys need to fly out maybe to a monastery in the middle of Spain, check out tripstreak.com/travel-like-a-boss. See all of you guys next week. Peace out. Thank you for listening to the Travel Like a Boss podcast. If you want to hear more, including the bonus, How to Choose the Perfect Niche episode, join our mailing list at travellikeabosspodcast.com. See you next week, and remember, if you want to travel like a boss, you need to be your own boss. So start your online business today and start living the lifestyle you've always dreamed of.